Every breakthrough in life begins with a simple but profound decision. The decision to raise your standards. Look at the areas where you've been tolerating less than you deserve, less energy, less health, less love, less success, and you'll realize that mediocrity creeps into your life not because it's forced on you, but because you allowed it. The moment you decide you will no longer settle, that's the moment your life begins to transform. Let's break this down into 6 powerful principles that will help you raise your standards and stop settling for less. Think for a moment about the life you're living right now, the results you've achieved, the health you have, the relationships you're in, the finances you manage, even the emotions you feel on a daily basis. If you peel back all the layers, they can be traced back to one thing: your standards. Your standards are not simply wishes or desires. They are the invisible lines you refuse to cross, the non-negotiables that dictate who you are and how you show up in the world. They are your personal identity in action. Here's the truth most people never confront. You don't get what you want in life. You don't even get what you think you deserve. You get what you tolerate. If your standard is that I just need to survive, then you will always find a way to scrape by. You'll settle for a paycheck that barely covers the bills. You'll accept a relationship that doesn't light you up. You'll allow habits that drain your energy instead of fuel it. Because that's the identity you've built. The identity of someone who's content to merely survive. But when your standard shifts to "I demand more from myself, I demand excellence, energy, and growth," suddenly your identity expands. You no longer see yourself as someone who just tries. You begin to see yourself as someone who must. And when something becomes a must, your whole psychology changes. You stop negotiating with excuses. You stop dabbling. You stop tolerating less than your best. Think about the times in your life when you actually transformed something permanently. Maybe you lost weight and kept it off. Maybe you got out of a toxic relationship. Maybe you turned your finances around. Was it because you wanted to? No. It was because your standard changed. You said, "I will no longer accept this reality." That one decision of raising your standard rewrote your identity and forced you to act differently. Identity is the strongest force in the human psyche. If you see yourself as someone who's disciplined, you'll find a way to live up to that, even on bad days. If you see yourself as someone who's lazy, you'll sabotage yourself no matter how many goals you set. This is why most people fail with New Year's resolutions. They set goals without raising their standards, without changing who they believe they are. Let me give you an example. Imagine 2 people trying to quit smoking. The first one says, "I'm trying to quit." The second one says, "I don't smoke anymore." Both might have quit for the same amount of time, but who do you think has the stronger identity? The first one still sees themselves as a smoker, just one who's attempting to resist. The second one has already shifted their identity. They've raised their standard. The behavior follows naturally. When you raise your standards, you change your story. And when you change your story, you change your life. The question you must ask yourself is this: what is the story I've been telling myself about who I am? If the story is small, your standards will be small. If the story is strong, your standards will lift you. So, how do you begin to raise your standards? You start by declaring who you really are. You draw a line in the sand. You say, "This is the kind of health I will accept. This is the level of respect I will demand. This is the quality of work I will bring to the world." And then you align your daily actions to that new standard. The transformation doesn't happen overnight, but identity grows with consistency. Each time you act in alignment with your new standard, you reinforce that identity. Each time you refuse to settle, you carve a new pathway in your mind that says, "This is who I am now." Remember this: raising your standards isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. It's about refusing to betray yourself by living below your potential. It's about shaping an identity so strong that it pulls you into the future you were meant to create. And it all begins with one decision: I will no longer settle. I will raise my standards. I will raise my identity. Let me ask you something powerful. What does it cost you every time you settle? Not in money, not in convenience, but in life force. Because here's the truth. Every time you settle for less than you're capable of, a part of you dies inside. You feel it. You know it. That quiet voice at night tells you, oh, you're made for more. But when you ignore it, when you push it down, when you choose comfort over courage, you pay the highest price of all: the pain of regret. Settling isn't neutral. It's not harmless, it's corrosive. It eats away at your confidence, your drive, your passion. You start to shrink into a smaller version of yourself. You make excuses like, this is good enough. Maybe this is just my fate. Maybe this is all I deserve. And the more you repeat that story, the deeper it buries itself into your identity. Think about a relationship where someone stays even though they know they're unloved, unvalued, or mistreated. Why do they stay? Because at some point they lowered their standard. They convinced themselves it's better than being alone. And yet, deep down, they know the truth. They know they're betraying themselves. That betrayal breeds resentment, anger, and eventually hopelessness. Or think about someone who tolerates a job they hate. Every morning they wake up, hit snooze 3 times, drag themselves to the office, and count the hours until it's over. Why? Because they've settled. They've decided the paycheck is worth the misery. But that decision has consequences. It steals their energy, it dulls their creativity, it makes them less alive. Settling is dangerous because it doesn't hurt all at once. It hurts slowly. It numbs you. It teaches you to live half asleep. And here's the scariest part. Once you normalize, settling in one area, it seeps into others. If you tolerate weakness in your health, you'll likely tolerate weakness in your relationships. If you tolerate mediocrity in your career, you'll tolerate mediocrity in your dreams. Life has a way of giving us exactly what we're willing to settle for. That's why some people never move forward. They never demand more. They never raise their standard. And then they look back decades later with pain in their heart, whispering, what if I had tried? What if I had believed I could have more? You know what hurts more than failing? Settling. Because at least with failure, you tried. You learned, you grew. But with settling, you never even gave yourself the chance. You robbed yourself of discovering who you could have been. The pain of settling isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. It disconnects you from your potential, from the energy that life has placed inside you. You start living as a shadow of yourself instead of the fullest expression of yourself, and that is a tragedy. But here's the good news. The pain of settling can become the fuel for transformation. Pain is a signal. It's your soul's way of saying, enough. Stop betraying yourself. Raise your standards. Demand more from your life. That pain, if you listen to it, can ignite a fire. It can push you to finally say, I will not tolerate this any longer. I deserve better. I must become better. The greatest breakthroughs often come when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. When you hit that moment, when you can no longer accept the suffering of settling, that's when everything shifts. So ask yourself right now, where am I settling? Where am I lying to myself, pretending I'm okay when I'm not? Where am I tolerating less than I know I deserve? Be brutally honest. Because the areas where you're settling are the very areas where your power is being drained. You were not born to live a life of compromise. You were not put here to be average. You were built for growth, expansion, contribution, passion. And the first step to reclaiming that life is to confront the pain of settling and to decide that you've had enough. When you stop settling, you stop betraying yourself. And when you stop betraying yourself, you finally open the door to the life you were meant to live. Excellence is not an act. It's not a moment. It's not something you turn on and off when it's convenient. Excellence is a standard, a way of being, a code you live by every single day. When you raise your standards, you don't just say, I want to do better. You decide, this is who I am now. This is the line I refuse to cross beneath. And once you draw that line, you can't go back. Because excellence is not about what you occasionally do. It's about what you consistently demand of yourself. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your results in life always match your standards, not your desires. Everyone desires success. Everyone desires happiness, wealth, freedom, love. But desire without standards is just wishful thinking. You don't get what you want. You get what you demand of yourself. Think of an athlete at the top of their game. Why are they different? It's not because they want it more. Millions of people want it. They are different because they have standards that most people will never accept for themselves. They train when they don't feel like it. They eat with discipline. They push past exhaustion. They don't ask a can I? They declare, I must. Excellence isn't their dream. It's their standard. The same principle applies to every area of life. If your standard in relationships is, I deserve respect, love, and growth, you won't tolerate being with someone who disrespects you. If your standard in your career is, I deliver more value than I'm paid for, you'll always find yourself rising higher. If your standard in your health is, I will treat my body as the foundation of my success, then no excuse, no craving, no laziness will break you. Excellence doesn't happen by accident. It happens by choice. You choose to demand more of yourself than anyone else would dare demand. You choose to hold yourself accountable when no one is watching. You choose to show up with full intensity, not because someone is forcing you, but because you refuse to betray your own standard. But here's the challenge. Mediocrity will always try to seduce you. The world will always whisper, it's okay, just relax, take it easy, you've done enough. And if you listen, you'll start lowering your standard inch by inch. Excellence requires vigilance. It requires recommitting every single day. I will not settle. I will not break my own word. I will hold myself to a higher code. Excellence is not perfection. Don't confuse the two. Perfection is impossible. It's a trap. Excellence, on the other hand, is about being the best version of you that you can possibly be today, in this moment. It's about pushing yourself to grow, to stretch, to expand, and to never accept mediocrity as your identity. Excellence is contagious too. When you live by a higher standard, you inspire others to do the same. People begin to trust you, follow you, and model themselves after you. Because deep down, everyone respects a person who refuses to compromise their values. Ask yourself right now, what is my standard? What will I no longer tolerate in my life? What must I demand of myself if I want to live at the level I know I'm capable of? I'm capable of. If your standard is weak, your results will be weak. But if your standard is unshakable, life has no choice but to rise to meet it. When you decide that excellence is your minimum, everything changes. Your relationships deepen, your career expands, your confidence skyrockets, and perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust yourself because you know that no matter what, you will not compromise who you are. Excellence is freedom. Excellence is power. Excellence is the bridge between the life you dream about and the life you actually live. So stop asking, what do I want? Start asking, what's my standard? Because the moment you raise your standard to excellence, you stop settling and you start living. There's a truth about human behavior that most people overlook. We will always act in alignment with who we believe we are. You can try to change your habits, you can try to change your routines, you can even try to change your goals. But if your identity doesn't shift, nothing will last. Because in the long run, your identity, your belief about who you are, will always overpower your intentions. Think about it. If you believe deep down I'm lazy, I'm undisciplined, I'm not the type of person who succeeds, you can set goals, make vision boards, listen to motivational videos, but your subconscious will sabotage you. Why? Because your brain will always find a way to act in alignment with the identity you've accepted. But here's the breakthrough. Identity is not fixed. You're not chained to the story you've been telling yourself. You're not trapped by what your past says about you. You have the power to choose a new identity, and when you do, your entire world shifts. Raising your standards begins with raising your identity. If you want to stop settling for less, you have to stop seeing yourself as a less. If you want to achieve more, you must begin with the unshakable belief. This is who I am now. Let me give you an example. Imagine two people who are trying to quit smoking. The first one says, I'm trying to quit. The second says, I don't smoke. Which one do you think is more likely to succeed? The difference is identity. The first person still identifies as a smoker who is struggling. The second has already shifted their identity to someone who simply does not smoke. One is battling against themselves, the other has already won. The same applies to every area of your life. If your identity is, I'm the type of person who always follows through, you'll stop procrastinating. If your identity is, I am strong, I am disciplined, I am resourceful, then when life throws challenges at you, you'll face them head on instead of collapsing. If your identity is, I deserve abundance and respect, you won't stay stuck in toxic relationships or dead-end jobs. Here's the problem though, most people's identity has been shaped by failure, rejection, and fear. They've internalized the voices of doubt. Teachers who told them they weren't good enough, parents who underestimated them, peers who laughed at their dream. And over time, they lowered their standards to match that false identity. But your past doesn't define your future. What defines you is what you decide right now. Who do you choose to be from this moment forward? It starts with language. Stop saying I'm trying. Stop saying I'm not good at that. Stop saying that's just who I am. That's the language of limitation. Instead, declare a new identity. Speak it until you believe it, and believe it until you live it. But words are not enough. You must back them up with action. Every time you act in alignment with your new identity, you reinforce it. Each workout, each disciplined decision, each moment of courage becomes a vote for your higher self. And slowly, the old identity fades, replaced by the standard of excellence you've chosen. The real power comes when your new identity is non-negotiable. When you no longer have to try because this is simply who you are. That's when transformation becomes permanent. So ask yourself, who am I becoming? What identity do I need to step into to live the life I dream of? What version of me no longer accepts mediocrity, no longer tolerates excuses, no longer settles for less? Because when you change your identity, you don't just change your actions, you change your destiny. One of the greatest shifts you will ever make in your life is not just raising the standards of what you achieve, but raising the standards of what you feel every single day. Most people live as emotional reactors. Something good happens, they feel good. Something bad happens, they feel crushed. They're like a boat tossed around by waves with no control of where it's going. And here's the problem: if your emotional state is at the mercy of circumstances, then your life is at the mercy of circumstances. Think about this. How many people do you know who have everything on the outside? Money, career, status, but are miserable on the inside? And on the flip side, how many people have very little yet carry a lightness, a joy, strength that makes them magnetic? The difference is emotional standards. If you're constantly settling for stress, worry, anger, resentment, jealousy, guess what? That becomes your normal. You condition your nervous system to live in negativity, and then no matter what you accomplish, you'll still feel empty. But when you raise your emotional standards, you stop saying, I'll feel happy when, and you start saying, I demand of myself to feel strong, to feel grateful, to feel alive now. This doesn't mean you ignore pain or pretend challenges don't exist. It means you take control over the meaning you attach to them. You decide that frustration is a signal to grow. That failure is a lesson, not a definition. That setbacks are setups for comebacks. Let's make it practical. Imagine you wake up late, spill coffee on yourself, and get stuck in traffic. Most people would spiral into irritation, snapping at others, carrying that state all day. That's a low emotional standard, letting trivial things steal your power. But someone with high emotional standards says, this moment doesn't own me, I own me. They laugh it off, reframe it, and move forward in a state of calm or even gratitude. That's strength, that's mastery. Here's the truth. The quality of your life is the quality of your emotions, not the size of your bank account, not the number of followers you have, not the titles after your name. It's how you feel moment to moment, day to day. And you have the power to raise that standard. You do it by making emotions non-negotiable. You set a new baseline. I don't tolerate long periods of frustration. I don't settle for living in fear. I refuse to make worry my default. So, instead you demand joy, gratitude, courage, peace, and yes, it is a demand. You don't wait for life to give you reasons to feel good. You create them. You generate emotions through physiology, focus, and language. You breathe deeper. You stand taller, you put your shoulders back. You focus on what's good, on what's possible, on what's meaningful. You speak words of power instead of words of weakness. And suddenly your emotions follow your lead instead of controlling you. Do you know what happens when you raise your emotional standards? You become unstoppable. You become unstoppable. Because a joyful, grateful, courageous person can endure more, create more, give more. Pain doesn't break them, it fuels them. Challenges don't crush them. They refine them. The greatest leaders, the happiest people, the most fulfilled souls, they didn't get there by accident. They got there because they refused to settle emotionally. They chose to raise their inner game. So ask yourself, what emotions have I been settling for? What have I accepted as a normal that is keeping me small? And most importantly, what do I choose as my new standard today? Because when you raise your emotional standards, the world outside might take time to catch up. But inside, you're already free. Here's the truth most people miss. When you raise your standards, it doesn't just change you. It changes everyone and everything around you. Think about it. Human beings are contagious. Energy spreads. Attitudes spread. Habits spread. If you walk into a room angry, people feel it. If you walk into a room confident and joyful, people feel that too. Your standards become the silent teacher to everyone you interact with. When you decide, I will no longer tolerate mediocrity in my health, suddenly your family notices. They see you eating better, training harder, living with more vitality, and without even preaching, you inspire them to do the same. Your actions become the permission slip for others to raise their game. When you raise your financial standards, when you refuse to settle for debt, for scarcity, for living in constant worry, you don't just free yourself. You show your children, your community, your peers what's possible when someone chooses discipline and abundance over chaos and excuses. When you raise your emotional standards, choosing gratitude and strength over frustration and weakness, you become the rock others lean on. Your friends, your coworkers, your loved ones, they begin to elevate simply because you set a new baseline for what's acceptable. This is the ripple effect. It starts with you, but it doesn't end with you. Look at history. Every great leader who ever shifted the course of nations began with a personal standard. They said, this is who I am, and this is what I demand. That conviction spread until it shaped movements, revolutions, and generations. Now, you may not be leading a nation, but make no mistake. You are leading someone. Your children are watching. Your partner is watching. Your friends are watching. Your coworkers are watching. And even when they don't realize it consciously, they are taking cues from the standards you embody. The question is, what are you teaching them? Are you teaching them to settle, to compromise, to shrink? Or are you teaching them to demand more of themselves, to live fully, to rise higher? Here's the beauty of the ripple effect. It doesn't require perfection. It requires consistency. People don't need you to never fail. They need to see you get back up when you do. They don't need you to never feel fear. They need to see you act with courage despite it. They don't need you to be flawless. They need to see you committed. That's what inspires change in others. And let's not sugarcoat it. When you raise your standards, some people will resist. Some will say, who do you think you are? Some will mock. Some will doubt. Some will doubt. Some will try to pull you back down because your growth makes them uncomfortable. But that's okay, because the ripple effect works both ways. It challenges the people who aren't ready to grow, but it elevates those who are. And those who are ready will rise with you. The world doesn't change because someone talks about higher standards. It changes because someone lives them. Someone decides that this is my line, this is my truth, this is who I am. And then others feel that energy, and they begin to shift. So ask yourself, what ripple are you creating right now? Are you sending out waves of strength, discipline, joy, and courage? Or waves of fear, frustration, and limitation? Because every day, whether you realize it or not, you're teaching the people around you what's acceptable. You're shaping your environment. You're creating culture. And when you raise your standards, truly raise them, you create a ripple that doesn't just transform your life. It transforms the lives of everyone who touches yours. And that's the legacy you want to leave. Not just success, not just achievement, not just comfort, but a standard that raised the tide for everyone. Because when you raise your standards, you don't just change your world, you change the world. Life will always meet you at your standards. If you demand little, you'll get little. If you demand greatness, life will stretch you, challenge you, and reward you. The decision to raise your standards is the decision to finally claim the life you deserve. So ask yourself right now, where have I been settling for less? Where have I lowered the bar? And then declare, enough. I will raise my standards. I will stop settling. I will demand more from myself and from life. Because the truth is simple. When you raise your standards, you raise your life.